So we need to talk about righteous anger for a second, because this is usually, I will say, the excuse that people use to not live the Jesus way and claim it is. That's what a lot of people say, because, listen, hey, you know what? Jesus went into the temple and he turned the tables, man, and they do that. They chuck him around. He's getting really angry, and it's chaos, and he's cracking the whip. He's angry. Therefore, I can do the same thing to other people. And the interesting thing is, first of all, I think I've taught in this text before, when Jesus did that, by the way, people think that he was like this uncontrolled, just rage fire, hurting people type of anger. And so that gives them justification to do the same, because it was for God's holiness. Well, first of all, they're in the temple of Jerusalem exploiting their own people and poor people at a festival. It's like someone coming in this sanctuary and doing things that are definitely very inappropriate. And we're just like, that's okay. No, Jesus would not be cool with that in his community. And when he cracks the whip, people think he's like whipping actual people. Like, I'm hurting people, I'm smacking. No. He's cracking the whip because, one, he let out all these animals, these kind of animals that they were using as sacrificial material for the festivals that they were ripping people off with. And they're just like going all over the place. And when you crack a whip, if you've ever heard a whip crack before, it definitely gets your attention. Like, whoa. That's what he's doing to get the animals' attention so they don't stampede the people in the temple. So Jesus' anger had nothing to do with hurting people. God's anger is always rooted in his love and forgiveness for people. His anger is always rooted for people being reconciled. That's where I say God's anger always leads to blessing. That's where it goes. That's how it always leads. And I can't do a sermon on righteous anger today. I've actually done one like 5 years ago. Maybe I'll just link it it was actually during COVID when I did it. Just really kind of mapping out what this looks like. But I love what missiologist Ed Stetzer says in his book, and you should read this book. I recommended this at the time, that sermon in COVID, Christians in an Age of Outrage. It kind of came out 5 years ago. He's a missiologist. He says, if your anger is not consistently and sacrificially tempered by steadfast love and forgiveness, it's not righteous anger. Does that make sense? If your anger isn't like constantly checked, that's the tempered, right? Tempered, when you're tempering steel, right? If it's not constantly checked under the banner of love and forgiveness, then it's not righteous anger. So what I've heard, what I was taught is like righteous anger is like, look, this is for the truth of God's word. So therefore, I can abuse people, or I can just do whatever I want in anger because God's on my side. That's a phraseology that you would use. God's on my side, therefore I have justification to do and say whatever I want this way and be angry this way. No. It's okay to be angry. Remember, that's the injustice part. But where does that anger lead? As soon as you start labeling other groups of people or the other person as something less than human, you have already got off the tracks. And friends, there are movements right now that claim to be Christian that say that path is okay. To belittle whole groups of people as less than human, and to revel in it and enjoy it and celebrate it, and then call it the way of Jesus, Jesus would look at them and say, you need to listen. You got some stuff to work out in your heart. You're very angry in there. So how do we deal with it? I mean, we're conditioned to be this way. It happens more than ever in our American political discourse. Let me give you an example of how this happens in our American political discourse. Those who are on the right, more conservative, or even far right, I would say, like the big deal, the phraseology that feeds into this is that it's all about good and evil. So if something doesn't line up with your political views, whatever those are on the right, then everybody that's against that is evil. and you're fighting evil, therefore it's a righteous crusade. It's a righteous thing to do because you're combating evil. You start labeling people as demonic or satanic or working for the devil, or you might call them antichrists, whatever. And you start labeling these people and detaching yourself, and therefore what happens is, well, they're just the enemy, and now they're demonic. So it's easy to treat them as less than human because you're justified. On the left, it's the same result, but the difference is it's all about, I hate people who hate other people. So if you hate certain types of people that hate other people, then you hate them. And the result ends up the same, right? You start vilifying people that aren't like that or that you hate, and then that's where you're at. That is what you're being trained to believe in our American political discourse. You can't win. Well, at least according to Jesus, because Jesus doesn't align with any of that. Jesus' result of anger, what he says to do, he gives an example. He says, imagine you're going to give your gift at the altar. It's something they do all the time. It's sacred. It's a very sacred act, worshiping. This is a ritual like, hey, this is part of me being in tune with God. Like it's one of the most sacred things that you can do. That's the image, right? You get that. They're going to do that. And someone has something against you. Not that you're angry with them. Someone's angry with you. He says, leave your gift there and go be reconciled to your brother and come and present your gift. Like that's how important Jesus says anger, misdirected anger in your heart is to get rid of, to reconcile. And that's the result of what should happen. The posture is always that whatever you do with this anger, it always should be directed to reconciliation, to coming together, to healing. That's where it always should lead. And if it doesn't, well, that's a problem. And it's so important that Jesus, even if you think like, I'm okay with God, here's my offering, and God's like, no, you need to leave it there, which says how you relate to other people is how you relate to God.